The best thing with this figure of Suzumiya Haruhi is that she does not look very outdated for an 11-year-old figure. She still stands up to today's standards, so you can display her maybe right next to Idol Master figures and she will fit in very nicely. Hi and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the third episode of Hall of Fame, a monthly series where I explore older figures that were released many years ago, figures that are particularly famous for a good reason or even infamous for a bad reason. In general, figures that stood out for any reason at all. So with this third episode today, we're exploring this figure over here, Max Factory's 1/8 scale, Haruhi Suzumiya Gekisou version, otherwise known as Extravaganza version, from Suzumiya Haruhi no Himitsu. Yeah, this is a mid-2000s to late 2000s anime by KyoAni, but very popular. It was even a trend back then. Later on in the early 2010s, we even got more movies from this series, Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, and then the supporting character Nagato Yuki also got her movie. This figure was initially announced and revealed, already painted in Wonder Festival sometime in 2008. I believe it was the summer edition of Wonder Festival. And then she was released in April 2009 for 7,800 yen. That is about 12,000 yen in today's currency or exchange rate when adjusted for inflation. Can you find one today in the used market? Yes, you can still find her for around 12 to 13,000 yen, but whether it is worth to pick up such an old figure for 12,000 yen, I guess that is up to you to decide, depending on whether how much you love the character. In my previous episode 2 of Hall of Fame series, Saber Lily Distant Avalon, I mentioned on how Saber Lily, together with Black Rock Shooter, influenced me into collecting anime figures, into this hobby itself, right? So those two were actually the second and the third figure to influence me. The very first figure to attract me was this one, Haruhi Suzumiya, back in 2008. In 2008, I was still deep into gunpla, Gundam model kits and so on. I was building master grade model kits. This figure was one of the very first to attract me towards anime figures, and then Saber Lily and Black Rock Shooter, they added on more poison over the next year or so. Together with Asahina, Mikuru, and Nagato Yuki, this trio of Gekisou figures became pretty rare and expensive shortly after release due to the popularity of Haruhi itself. However, with anime stuff, they do not remain popular forever, right? K-On! Went up and then down. Kankole became very popular at some points in the early 2010s and then eventually it went down either. So things do not remain popular forever, except for a very small number of legendary anime series or games like Evangelion. Most things will come to an end. And when Haruhi's popularity was sliding in the early to mid 2010s, that is when the figure prices started falling. And I managed to pick her up for almost the same as the recommended retail price in around the early 2010s. I don't remember which year anymore. But I did not pay much for her and I got her off eBay from a local seller. I was a pretty happy person after getting my hands on her finally a few years after her release. But I did not care whether her popularity was dropping at that time because this was one of my favorite anime characters in the past. And not to mention, this is my favorite version of all Suzumiya Haruhi figures in the market. So it was like, finally, a holy grail is in your hands. That is how it felt like. Unfortunately, I did not buy Asahina, Mikuru, and Nagato Yuki. Those three were supposed to be one set because the other two, yeah, they were still fairly hard to come by after I got my hands on Haruhi. I should have picked up all three to be honest, but I'm fine without the other two. This is the most important one among the three. I wasn't that obsessed with completing figure sets in the past when I was in the early days of my figure collection journey. The quality of this figure for the standards of year 2009, I would say it is amazing, fairly high quality. There are no quality control issues like paint bleeding, which you will even see in a Fat Company figure today in year 2022. None of that over here. However, I won't comment on things like paint scratches because this is an old figure, many years has passed. There might be flaws where it is inflicted by user error like myself, so I won't comment on the scratches, things like that. There are two very obvious scratches on her base over here in front. Yeah, definitely user error on my behalf. I have no idea how it happened long ago. And if you were to ask me, do I feel painful when I see this scratch over here? If I noticed it 5 years ago, maybe yes. Today I don't feel it that much because this is a very old figure. So I guess I'm being more accepting of the presence of flaws. The next thing is regarding this semi-transparent part here on her dress. This seems to be the only part on this figure that is kind of sticky as time has passed. PVC material and their plasticizer material seeping out from the material and causing the figure to become sticky. Yeah, this transparent part over here is the only part that is affected somehow. So material composition has something to do with it, that is for sure. Because sticky figures, they are more prevalent with Figmas and androids, not so much for expensive scale figures. For scale figures like this, when they do happen, they are usually limited to a few select parts, where the material being used is very similar to those used to make Nandroids. That is what I have noticed so far over so many years. So I'm going to clean this figure up after today's video, I guess, because I've taken her out from the box after for so long, yeah. So with this figure, there is actually one major flaw on both sides of her legs, which I noticed it immediately. However, this is also one of those flaws where I guess it is acceptable in year 2009 but not today. This is something you only see in price figures, and that is mold lines. If you see very carefully, you will notice visible mold lines along the side of her legs. The second thing is regarding her stockings over here, painted and then they applied decals and then clear coating to seal the decal underneath. So this is acceptable for year 2009, but since the late 2010s like 2016, 2017 or so, Alter has started using real fabric, real cloth for stockings on a figure, even 1x7 scale figures. So for today, if this figure is released today and it comes with a 20,000 yen price tag, then we will expect to see real fabric on the stocking over here, not something painted like this, unless she is like 12,000 yen, but not for 20,000 yen. That would be an issue, yeah. The best thing with this figure of Suzumiya Haruhi is that she does not look very outdated for an 11-year-old figure. She still stands up to today's standards, so you can display her maybe right next to Idol Master figures and she will fit in very nicely. As long the other figures are 1x8, of course. I mean, nowadays a lot of figures are 1x7 scale. So this figure still stands up to today's standards when it comes to quality, maybe except for the mold lines on the side of her legs. So what do you think about this figure of Suzumiya Haruhi? Do you own one? Let me know down in the comments below. And thank you very much for watching today's third episode of Hall of Fame series, Suzumiya Haruhi Gekisou version by Max Factory. See you guys again very soon and goodbye.